Hi everyone, and thank you for having me today for this session on design and localization. This bio was really intense. I had forgotten bits of it, to be honest, but that's great. So thank you for that intro. Let's get cracking. So today we are going to start talking about design and localization and how the two teams used to work together and how we are working together now more collaboratively with a plugin that we've designed. But before we deep dive into the localization world, I want to get your brain into localization. I think we have people from all over the world, so that's amazing. So let's see and get your brains into that mindset. All right, so on that screen, we're going to play a little game, a game of spot the mistakes. So on the left-hand side, you have a screen in Dutch, and on the right-hand side, a screen in French. Those are not the issues, but you have 5 design/localization issues on there. So I'll give you a second to look at it, and maybe in the comment section, if you could put what you're finding out, that'd be great. So just to get all of this. So I'll give you a few seconds on the Dutch one. There is only one problem. On the other side, the French screen, you have about 4 issues on there. So I'll give you a few more seconds. I won't lie, if you speak the languages, it's slightly easier, but you should be able to find a few. All right, I can see some comments coming through. Brilliant. I can see some of you found some errors, so let me give you the answers. So first one on the Dutch login screen, at the bottom, you see that we have the piece of code instead of the actual content that should be displayed on the app. On the app screen, at the top, you have the tile section. So the tile section, the first one, we have a random Spanish. So we have offers for $5.99 instead of each for $5.99 instead of the word offers. The second tile, we have the word Italian cut halfway through. And then on the banner section, we have actually 2 issues on there. The first one, the text is not wrapping up properly, so we can see the end is cut a little bit. And also at the bottom, it says Conditions Générales, which is the French for terms and conditions, but we actually cannot see the link to the terms and conditions. So that could also potentially be a legal issue. And then finally, we have the fastest delivery, which is a bit of random English in the middle of the French app screen. So all of those issues, unfortunately, they do happen, and they happen more often than we think. So how could we avoid them? Well, actually, all of those issues could have been avoided at design stage. And this is what I'm here to talk to you about, how with a tool as simple as the plugin, we can easily correct all of those errors. But before I tell you about the plugin, let me properly introduce myself. So my name is Anne-Sophie Delafosse, and I'm the localization manager at Deliveroo. Deliveroo is a food delivery company. We're based in London in the UK, but we actually operate in 12 markets. And our applications for the restaurants, for the riders, and for the consumers are available in 9 different languages. And that's where my team come in. So I lead a team of language experts who will not only translate the content that you see on your app, but they will also advise on images, icons, colors, cultural references, emojis, things like this. So let me take you through the product journey and how localization is helping you at every step of the way. So at the top, hopefully everyone can see now. Sorry about this, I didn't see the comments coming through. So at the top, we can see like a generic product journey. Bear in mind, we probably all know that it's never that streamlined. And at the bottom in gray, you can see examples of where localization will help you. So if I walk you through the product journey, so imagine you are about to launch a feature and you want to do some user research. The user research part, we will help you to translate the prototypes, make sure they're accurate culturally, that we're asking the right questions, things like this, surveys, discussion guides, all of this material. When we go into the design stage, we will work very closely with our content designers and product designers to make sure that using an emoji here and there is actually understood by that culture and that language, that we should be using that kind of color, that icon is fit for that market. So we really help them get there at the design stage. When we go into the building the product, we will work closely with the tech team to make sure, for example, that the dynamic content such as restaurant names, greetings, addresses, date format, currency, and so on, is displayed properly as well. And then finally, during the promoting stage, so when your feature is live and you want to promote it on your social platforms or emails, we will help the different marketing teams with the different assets. So you can see we're actually really involved in every step of the way, and that's just your product journey. But today, I want to really concentrate on those two stages, the design stage and the building stage, and how in more details, I want to talk about that bridge in between, the handover process between design and build. All right. And this step and how we have now changed it has impacted the beginning and the end part. So the user research and the promoting part. So how do we go from a design file to a localized app in 9 languages? Well, let me take you down memory lane a little bit. Back in 2018, 2019, that does feel like ages ago, right? That was our workflow. And again, you can imagine that's never as linear as it sounds like. So first step, excuse me, we would have our experience team working their magic on Figma. So that is your content designers, product designers, user researcher working on it to create that user flow. Then once they're done, kind of done, you would share that Figma with the engineers, and the engineers will start building the feature. Once they're done, we are moving to localization, and that's where my team will take over and translate all the content into the different languages. Once we are done, we are sharing all this content, translated content, back to the engineers who will merge it into their code and create the build. And the product is ready to be launched in all languages. So you might think, well, it seems like a fairly good workflow, seems to be running all right. Well, actually, not that great. We had a lot of manual tasks. The manual tasks were that engineers had to upload a screenshot on every single piece of content we were localizing. So some of you might wonder, but why a screenshot? What's the point? Well, if you speak another language, right, and you have to translate something. So let's take the example of the word tip that we actually had recently. So the word tip could mean so many different things in English. It could mean money that you get because you're happy with the service at the restaurant, for example, or for your rider when they're delivering your food. It could mean a piece of advice that you get. It could also mean tip of the finger. So 3 different ways to translate it, right? So if you don't have that screenshot, that context to tell you what's before, what's after, what it's all about, we could have translated it in so many different ways. And so that would have ended up in a very bad user experience. So that is why we need that context to get that brief, to get that better translation. So, but imagine if you have, 20 piece of content to send to localization, that's 20 different screenshots. And if you think about 1 or 2 minutes per screenshot to upload, that's a lot of time and a lot of manual tasks for engineers. definitely not the best use of their time. Secondly, that workflow was too slow. Too slow because, and I'm sure if we have some localization experts in the room here, you will have heard that quite often. Oh, let's launch in English first. Oh, we can't launch that feature. We're waiting for translations. Localization was seen as a bottleneck sometimes. And that was not necessarily always fair, because we actually had to wait for engineers to finish their work for us to be able to start. So yes, English was finalized a long time before, but we couldn't actually start before the very end. So that was quite of a problem. So I wanted also to change that perception of localization being slow and old and not automated. We had localization issues. So as we've seen at the beginning, truncated problems, text not wrapping up, not enough space. I mean, some languages are, 30, 40, even 50% longer. So we need to make sure we also cater for those languages. So we had those kind of issues. But also something I haven't touched on yet is localizing prototypes. So let's go back to the user journey example. The user research example. If you have, for example, a prototype that you want to test in a country that you don't speak the language, so you would go and maybe test 3 or 4 or even 5 different prototypes. What we used to do is for each piece of content that we had, we would copy and paste that into an Excel document, get that document translated, and then the designers would have to go back onto Figma and paste every single line. So you can imagine how much time that was. And as a result of that, I think because it was so time consuming and so manual, we didn't do as many user research in non-English speaking markets as we would have liked to. So those were all the issues that we wanted to tackle. And that's when I started to, brainstorm with the different people and had that, that kind of light bulb moment. So I have a background in translation, and I used to work quite a lot with InDesign files. And if you have an InDesign file and you work with a translation management system, that's called a TMS. So what you would do is you would have your IDML file, you push it onto your TMS. The TMS automatically creates a bilingual file with the English on one side and an empty column on the other side, where the linguist can input their translation and they would see the visual. So they would be able to see as the PDF would look like in English. So once the translations are done on that bilingual document, you would export that IDML back from the TMS. And what it does is that all the English text is then replaced automatically by the translated version. So what the designers would have to do is just to, tidy things up a little bit, make sure the columns are not too long, that all the text is on one page and things like that. So I was wondering, why can't we do the same with Figma? Why can't we get to scan Figma, take all of the strings directly from the design stage and push it on our localization management system? So I then started talking to the engineers and be like, hey, what do you think of that idea? And they were quite keen to see it happen. So that takes us to May 2019, when we had our hack day, and I got a bunch of engineers to work on it with us. And that was the beginning of us creating a plugin. So it was actually quite successful because we were able to push the content, but we were not able to push the screenshots at the same time and not pull back. But, it was a first step. And that was before Figma opened their plugin as well. So in the summer, when Figma said, hey, we're actually opening up to plugin, I started contacting our vendor called Phrase. Phrase is our localization management system, and shared the idea with them. It's like, hey guys, how do you feel about this? Do you think it's something you could create? I knew they were already doing something similar with another design tool. Sorry, not design system, design tool. So, I gave it a try. And in September, they told me, actually, yeah, we would like to do it, and we're going to start. So in the fall 2019, we had a lot of discussion with Phrase and with our engineers and with our designers and content designers to see how that would work. And I'm happy to say that in January, we started testing it. And in March, and since March, actually, we're using it on real life production stuff. So you might want to see how it works, or I hope you do, otherwise you will not be here. So before I do, I just want to explain a few terms. Phrase is our localization management system. You might know it as Phrase app. They've changed their name fairly recently. Contextual key. So we call it internally contextual key, but some people might have heard it as string ID. Is that piece of code that calls the string of content. That string of content is the text that is displayed on the app. All right, so just a couple of things to remember here. All right, so let me show you a little demo of how it works. So I just need to go full screen to make sure you see. Hopefully you won't have a problem this time around. Cool. All right, so I'm just going to wait a second if you can all see that. All right for everyone? Okay, looks great. Perfect. So the first thing you have to do is, oh, actually, no. First thing I have to say is that workflow that you're seeing now is based on, or is the result of a lot of discussions and a lot of feedback loops with a lot of different people. And that's your designers, product designers, content designers, engineers, and localization experts. So that works only because we worked all together on this. All right, but let me show you. So first thing you have to do is to prep your file, your Figma file, for localization. That means you need to change your dynamic content. So we see here, we have Tina, we have Roots Cafe. This is the dynamic content. So we need to replace it with a placeholder value so that your engineers can use. Second step is to rename your key. Because your engineers are going to get those key names, those contextual keys from Figma, it's important that they can easily see it. Because otherwise, if you have different key names on Figma and in your code, that's just not going to work. So it needs to be exactly the same. So the way to do that is that you rename your key, your text layer directly on Figma. So you can see, I'm just show you a quick example here. So that's the second step, dynamic content, key names. Once all of that is done, your file is actually ready to be sent to localization. And that's kind of like your handover process. Opening up the plugin, so we'll open our plugin, so Phrase, and that's where the pop-up comes up, or should come up soon. And then you'll see through the keys we've selected. So I've only selected 3 for the sake of that presentation, and we're ready to push. So when you're ready to push, you select your project, select the language, you're going to do into English, and you're pushing to Phrase app. So this is, so now, sorry, we are going to become translators for a sec. So you're done, the product designers are done at this stage. And so we're moving on to being the translators. As the translator, you can see we have the key name, we have the strings, and mainly we have that screenshot every time for every single key. So once the translations are done, we can update the team and tell them, hey, it's ready to be pulled back. So engineers will take everything from Phrase and designers will be able to pull back into Figma. So this time on the plugin, you see we go to pull translation and not push this time. If, for example, you want to check that if the Spanish is done, because we haven't worked on it yet, the localization team has not worked on it yet, it says that it's waiting for translation. So you can't actually pull that yet. But for the French one, because we've just done it, it's ready to be pulled. So what we tend to do is to create a new page, so that way our designers can see on the side all the different languages in the different pages. So we'll create a new page in French. You see on the side, automatically, the plugin adds that locale code at the end. So let's have a look at what the French looks like. So you can see here that the 3 layers that we had selected at the beginning are already replaced by the French. And we can see that, excuse me, we can see that because French is 30% longer, you'll have to move things around a little bit. So we can already tell engineers, okay, we need to make more space, we need to make sure we wrap up, things like this. So also, what's important here is if you need to share this document or this Figma with your marketing team because they need to create assets, for example, they can do that. You can export it directly. So what you could do is just change the name with a French name and export that file directly. So it's not even built yet, but still you can share it with a marketing team so they can create their assets. So that's the end of it. There we go. So this is how it works. So you might see why, oops, sorry, clearly I can't do two things at the same time. There we go. All right, perfect. Let me just go back into full screen for you here. There we go. Sorry about that. So why we are loving it. I'm sure you can see why with this demo, but let me go into a little bit more details of why we personally love it at Deliveroo. First one, faster build. We're building a lot faster for two reasons. Well, less engineering time because we don't have, the engineers don't have to push a screenshot on every single key. It's done automatically for them. Secondly, because we are starting at the same time as the engineers, we don't have to wait anymore. So we're actually working at the same time at the building, even sometime before them. That means they can pull all the translations in one go at the end. So we've actually reduced our product journey, like from design all the way to the end by about 30-40%. So that's quite a lot. Less in engineering time because, well, 2 minutes per key. You've seen just 3 keys. That's already 6 minutes. Imagine how many engineers that you have in your team. That's quite a lot of time saved. And also better localization. And that's for 2-3 reasons. First one, well, I mean, I've selected only 3 keys for the demo, right? But you could select your entire Figma and push that in one go. And that's what we tend to do. So that means that when it comes to phrase, our translators or localization experts, should I say, see the entire flow in one go. They have the full context. They understand better the user journey and what we're trying to achieve. That means they can select the best language to use for our users. So that's the first thing. Second thing, because we can pull back and test the design in all the different languages, we're able to fix all the issues you've seen at the beginning directly at design stage, and we are able to tell engineers what to do at the design stage. And then I think also, which has been kind of a game changer for me and the way I work with the team, is that product designers and content designers are even more aware. I mean, they were aware about it before, but even more aware of the localization issues. And now when they design, they have in the back of their mind that they're not creating a product for one language, one culture, but they're creating a product and a user and an interface that is suitable for many cultures and many languages. So that is really been changing the mindset and how localization is perceived as well. So one other advantage, and I think that's one of my favorites, and I'm going to try to wrap up because I can see the time. One of my favorite is we collaborate even more. Don't get me wrong, we used to collaborate a lot already within the experience team, but with that plugin and us being able to share all of this already localized prototypes with other teams, we're able to go to the Italian team, for example, or the French team and be like, hey, look at this prototype. And that's what you can see at the moment going in on the side, that video. That video is us sharing the Figma prototype. The page is not even built yet. Well, it is now, otherwise I would not share it with you, but it was not at the time. So we have actually shared that prototype directly in Italian with the team. So they were able to put their comments and the designers were able to change and modify things at the same time. So that for me has been really great, because that means everyone is more aware of localization and what it means to create a user journey for a global audience. So, all right, 1:23, I need to wrap up. So if you think this is something that you would like to do, we're using Phrase, but I know a few other localization management systems have their own plugin. So I know SmartLink has one, TransitFX has one. I'm pretty sure other vendors are also designing theirs. So definitely chat to your team, chat to your vendors. Who knows, maybe you want to also build your own. So that's it. So I would like to thank you very much for listening in.